Hello, everyone. I'm Jackie Bushell, and I'm here today, delighted to be here today, in conversation with Jane Elworthy. And Jane is a sound healer, a channel, a teacher of sound, and she's a specialist in the sacred women's instrument, the frame drum. And she's been working with the frame drum for over 30 years. And we were asked to record this conversation by Holly for the Wise Women Gathering. And thank you, Jane. I'm so glad you could connect in with us today. Welcome,
Thank you,
welcome.
Jackie. Thanks so much, and hello everyone. It's really wonderful to be with you today to give a just a very short presentation on what the frame drum is. The difference between a frame drum and another sort of a drum like a conga or a djembe is that the diameter of the head on a frame drum is greater than the depth of the body. So I just happen to have a few here with me. So this is a small style of frame drum. Now, the frame drum actually evolved from the grain sieve, and the earliest image I've got, which I won't be showing today, is from around 6000 BC. So if you can imagine an ancient grain sieve. So the diameter of the head is greater than the depth of the body. And some of them have a handle at the back. This particular one has an open back and it's played in a particular way, which we'll probably get to in this short amount of time that we've got. So that's the difference. Now, in terms of the sound, the frame drum has an incredible range because with something like, for example, the conga, the resonating chamber is the wooden structure, the body itself, whereas with a frame drum, the resonating chamber is the air itself, and you get all sorts of incredible harmonics or overtones that happen with a frame drum. Also, some of them have quite a big diameter, and so you can get some incredibly deep sounds, and also through different ways of playing, you can bend the notes. Here you'll see that I'm bending. You can get all sorts of beautiful, very sensual sounds by scratching the skin, by bending it, and also the other thing about the frame drum, and we're going to get a little bit into the history of the drum in a minute, is that there are different strokes on the drum that relate to the elements. So there's a stroke for water and a stroke for air and fire and earth and all sorts of other sounds that you can make as well. So I'll keep
So
it
it
brief.
it wasn't just for music.
Not just for
Yeah.
music, absolutely not. That's a good thing, Jackie. So look, say you were doing a ritual for fire, the tuck, TAK element, which is the high bright sound. If you think of a flame, this sort of fire, bright high sound. So that would be used a lot within the rhythm to sort of draw up. And remember, we're talking about once rhythm has put you into an altered state, we have these elementals absolutely available to us.
I've heard some questions around should we even be working with a frame drum here as Anglo women in Australia, in the West. This coming from an idea that it's primarily a Native American or a Siberian shamanic instrument.
Yeah. I think that it's really common for people to have that idea that it is a Native American and, like you said, Siberian instrument. But that's really because the frame drum is not known in the West. But you know what? It's white women's natural, inherent, sacred drum. It's just that it was taken away from us. And I'll just give a little very brief
Mm.
story around this. For thousands and thousands and thousands of years, the frame drum was the main instrument of worship. trance-inducing states, celebration, rhythm making. It's actually a technology of transformation. It works with changing the brain waves, patterning, and a whole lot of things that, again, we won't get into today. And so there were rhythms also played in different time signatures: 5s, 7s, 11s for childbirth, all sorts of 9s for the ending of ritual, the ending of cycles. And it was in ancient Sumeria, for example, there were 2 measures of meal allotted to the sacred well, and 9 measures of meal allotted to the sacred frame drum. So this has been an instrument of high status. Now, and it was played in many, many countries. Now, just for this second, I'm going to be talking about Europe. So when Rome adopted Christianity around 200-ish, 2 to 300 AD, it was actually made an act of heresy for women to play their sacred instrument, the frame drum. So, and when it re-emerged in the culture, it re-emerged more around the time of the Crusades, and then it re-emerged as a military instrument. And then we can get into the whole thing of the rhythmic cycles that were handed down to us then were in 4/4 only, because that's the number of marching and of structure and of order, and it's nothing wrong with the number 4, but it began to limit our psyche by just offering us rhythms in 4/4 time. And so rhythm is political, and again, that's another whole... the Old Testament talks about the frame drum. The prophetess Miriam playing the frame drum. There are some old texts not in the Bible that talk about Mary Magdalene, of course. It was called the tof, T-O-F, or the tuff. Today it's called the duff in Middle Eastern culture. But what I was getting to about how white women don't know that the frame drum is their traditional instrument is because it was taken away so early from us. Whereas in the Native American tradition or the African tradition, for example, it's just that it wasn't taken away in the same way. Of course, they've gone through their own trials and tribulations with what's been imposed on them, of course, but to a certain degree, Native American people, of course, have kept their drum. And so we think of it just being a Native American drum when it's so much more than that. Yes. So now we're going to talk about Irish. So many of us here in Australia have Irish heritage. And so just if you look at the image on the right, you'll see this figure here, beautiful figure with her vagina pulled right open. Now these are what are called Sheila na gigs, and many of you women listening to this will be familiar with the Sheila na gig statues. They're found in many old churches. So many of them have been destroyed, but they're always shown with their vagina open, and the face is either laughing or grimacing. I personally, in my research, believe that they are the goddess Bridget in her hag form. And again, that's another whole thing. So on the right here, on the left, sorry, you'll also see another Sheila na gig, a much older one, much more worn. You'll see her hands. She's holding her vagina open, and under her arm she's got a disc. Now we don't actually know what that disc is, but there are Irish scholars that have looked at this and also believe that it's a frame drum, which I absolutely believe. And the rites to the goddess Bridget always involve the drum. And the Sheila na gig, these statues themselves, Sheila, even though it's become sort of a derogatory term for woman, originally meant woman of power, the word Sheila. And the gig became the word jig, which is the Irish rhythm in 6. And so, of course, we've got the hex, We've got this, the rhythm in 6 and the 6-pointed star and the hexagon itself, all connected to the goddess Bridget. So that the Irish bodhrán has been played for thousands of years in honour of Bridget. And that is a direct white women's lineage, directly connected to the goddess and to the frame drum. So let's look at a couple of other images. Now here we have the beautiful, this is one image of Hathor. This is actually from Mesopotamia. It's believed to be about 4,000 years old. Just beautiful, beautiful face. And here she's playing the very, very small, what I call, it's like a kanjira or a toff. They're different sizes. The one I'm holding here is a fish skin. And you'll see that she's got her hand, she's holding it in her left hand like this. This is an open-backed drum, no handle at the back. And you can see with her right hand, she's got her finger like this. Now this is the traditional split finger technique that's used today in India and some parts of the Middle East, and that's to do a particular split fingering technique. So it's this kind of a movement back and forth, and it also mirrors where it's believed to have come from. It's the origins, but what came from that was the Irish bodhrán with a little stick sound. But originally it was this back and forth with the fingers of both hands in this style here. There's another one that, this is one from India, and again you can see she's holding it in her left hand like this, and what she's doing this time is you can see that she has her hands here like this. Now this is what's called the Kali note, also called Pa, P-A-H, and it's the dullest sound on the drum. I talked a little bit about the tuk, fire element. We have the dum, which is the water element. And we also have the air, which is doing more scratches and all sorts of ethereal kinds of sounds. And then we have the pa, the Kali note, which is the dull sound right in the middle. And if you put them together, for example, if we were to put together dum, pa, which is the water element and the earth, we could have something, a beautiful, very simple rhythm. For example. So that was just showing you another culture there. So here I love this image. This is from, I believe, the northwest part of the USA. You can see the woman in the center has the 5-pointed star painted there, and I just love their costumes. I love it. We often see Native American drums being played by men, but I want to just include this to show that it's also a women's instrument. It looks very cold. Here's another, this is a woman, this is a contemporary image. This is a shamanic woman from Tibet, and her name is Ama Bombo. And here you can see her playing, and she's using a different kind of a stick. It's got the curved end, and she's holding it on a handle. You'll see across cultures connected to the birth, death, regeneration cycle, and often connected to the blood mysteries. So very often the images, certainly the contemporary ones, where the paint still exists, they're often painted in red to represent blood. I love that image too. And here we have Hathor, the goddess Hathor. I'm very connected to her and work with channeling the energies of Hathor. And here again you can see her playing this style. Here's a slightly different one again, open at the back. You hold it here like this, and here she's playing it again in this she's often, there's literally thousands of images of the goddess Hathor playing this particular style of drum. And here she is again, playing directly to the goddess, to the god Horus. And so this, and it looks like an alabaster jar, and that's interesting that that's there, because it really, the frame drum carried through the whole lineage of Hathor, Isis, into the Magdalene line, into the Rose line, that carried all the way through and continues today. And I feel part of my work is also to carry this lineage through. And it was a very, very strong calling and a very strong message to me 30 odd years ago. But she's playing to Horus, the god of the underworld. And that the frame drum is deeply, deeply connected to trance states, to altered states of consciousness, and to the ability to play rhythm, to get into a conscious state, to access divine guidance and the wisdom from the other realms. And so
Or is there anything else that you would like to, for the women who are so drawn to the frame drum today and their sense of claiming it, reclaiming it, remembering it, and the power of the frame drum? You've already spoken to that a bit, but is there anything else you'd like to end with?
I think it's a deeply powerful instrument, and when you take away someone's rhythm, you take away an aspect of their soul. And so I think when we connect back into rhythm, it has the purpose of re-souling us, and as the divine feminine returns really strongly onto the planet, what I'm finding is that the frame drum is coming along with it. And when I began like 35 years ago, hardly anyone, there was Lane Redmond and me, basically, and Glenn Velez, who was my teacher, but there was hardly anyone playing the frame drum. And now I'm finding that there's so many women that are drawn to it. Some are teaching it, and many contact me and they don't even know why, but they just say, I'm drawn to this instrument. And what I'd say is, claim it, take it up. We need your power, and there's an immense power that comes through the voice and rhythmic structures and rhythms in general, and the altered states of consciousness and what can be accessed through rhythm. So I
Yes.
teach, and I teach women to make various sorts of frame drums. I work with also working with rhythm consciousness, and a retreat coming up, and an ongoing trainee called The Power is in Your Hands. And I think it's really important that we literally, physically and metaphorically, take up this power that's within us. And there's no better way than the frame drum. And yeah, yeah, it's quite an extraordinary thing. And it's your
Oh.
sacred, it is the white women's instrument, as well as many other cultures as well. And yeah, it's my deep love.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you so much for being with us today. And we really look forward to seeing all of you gorgeous women at Wise Women Gathering coming up in May.
Blessings to
Blessings
you
to you
all.
all.
Bye bye.